Hello, welcome to the training webinar for this week. I'm Dale Franks, and this week we are going to talk about system variables. By the way, let me just throw in an administrative note here. I am working on some brand new topics for the training webinar based on some suggestions that I've received from some of you on some topics that you would like to hear. So I'm still working through those and building those. We still have a schedule on the support site for the next couple of weeks for the training topics. These will be topics that I've covered before. But after that, I should be able to begin throwing in some brand new topics, stuff we've never talked about before, to increase the variability of topics that are available in the training webinar. Right now, I've got about a year's worth of webinars, and so we're kind of repeating about once a year. I'd like to extend that difference, that distance between repeats. So we'll be adding some new and I think more interesting topics to the training webinar as we move forward. For today, however, we're going to talk about system variables, but we're going to do something a little bit different. In the previous webinars, we went through this form and we looked at all these different ways of formatting and using system variables. We're not really going to do that this time, although I'm sure that at some point or another, I may come back here to just show some examples of something, but I'm going to do something different and talk about using system variables kind of in the real world. I'm not entirely sure that I have 2 full hours on that, but we'll go through it and I'll keep talking and we'll see how far we get. I suppose I should at least give some brief introduction to the concept of system variables. So let me open up Visual Studio Code so that we can see a relatively large format text here so that we can work through it. This is the transcript from Tuesday's webinar. Let's go with a new text file. So all system variables in Process Director are demarcated with squiggly brackets or curly brackets. I think probably curly brackets is the more correct term. So curly brackets are a reserved character in Process Director. Anytime that you throw in curly brackets, Process Director is going to look between those brackets and see if it can parse a system variable. So in this case, this is the universal system variable to return the current date. So Process Director will see that opening curly bracket, look for the closed curly bracket, and will then begin just parsing anything in here as a system variable. Obviously, cur date is the current date system variable, so that would parse correctly. There are some wrinkles with this. If you're going to use JavaScript, we'll take a look at that a little bit later, because when you're using JavaScript, JavaScript is generally a part of, or JavaScript curly brackets are generally a part of normal JavaScript. And so if you're going to have JavaScript that uses system variables, it's going to not mess things up, but you're going to have to change the way that you format your JavaScript in order to ensure that normal JavaScript curly brackets, which generally are used to format the start and end of a subroutine, for example, or a more complex if statement or a switch statement. You use curly brackets a lot in JavaScript, and if you're also going to try to use system variables in JavaScript, you've got to be able to tell the system what is a JavaScript curly bracket and what is a system variable curly bracket. That's a little bit of a complexity that we'll look at in a little bit later in this webinar. Now, system variables aren't necessarily just a single system variable. You can nest system variables. So let's say that I wanted to pull the activity users for the running timeline activity. There's a couple of different ways I can do this, and we'll discuss some of these complications a bit later. But in general, let's say that I wanted to show the activity users for a system variable. Well, the problem with this is that I have to specify an activity name. Okay, well, unfortunately, I don't want to, if I have 20 different activities, I don't want to try to figure out uh, I don't want to put 20 different activity users into a form and then have 20 different activity names and then try to figure out when to show and hide these 20 different activity users system variables. What I want them to do is just to show me whatever the current activity is. And this is where nesting comes in very useful, because with nesting, instead of specifying a specific activity name, I can drop in another system variable. I can actually return, and let's get rid of that activity. Well, yeah, I'm still going to have to get rid of it. Let's just type in activity underscore running underscore name. And this system variable will return the name of the currently running activity. So activity running name is going to return whatever the running activity is. And what this enables me to do is to nest this system variable inside of activity users so that the running activity name is just specified dynamically. So whenever I open the form, whatever activity happens to be running will be the activity that gets returned, or the activity name that gets returned by the activity running name system variable. And thus it fills out this requirement on activity users to pull the activity, to pull the active activity users, or all of the activity users in this case, for a specified activity. And that activity gets specified dynamically simply by pulling whatever the current running activity name is. So being able to nest system variables does a lot of cool stuff. One of the examples that I often use with sequence numbers, for example, which have a similar problem, if I type in just sequence number. So what the sequence number system variable does is it just returns an auto numbering number, right? It starts with 1 and then it just continues to, well, not infinity, but a pretty high number of integers. Now, if I just type in sequence number here, just type in sequence number, that's just a generic sequence number. And so it will just return a running tab of all of the sequence numbers that I've created. Generally, I don't want to do that. Generally, I want different sequence numbers to operate for different processes. So, for example, if I wanted to throw in an HR process, and I've used this many times before. So what I really want is HR-24, which is my year, and 0001 as my number. And I want this on January 1st, 2024 to restart numbering at 1 and then go to whatever that number is. And then on January 1st, 2025, whatever my number happens to be here, let's say it's, 9,870. That's a lot of HR requests. But on January 1st, 2025, what I want this to show is HR 25, and I want this to just recount and start all over at 001. And I want this to happen automatically. Well, again, nesting system variables helps me do that. In the sequence number, there needs to be some sort of category name. And if you drop in a category name, it creates a unique sequence number based on that category name. Now, of course, the problem is that if I hard code category name in here, then my sequence number is never going to restart because my category name never changes. So once again, this is where the ability to nest system variables helps me quite a lot, in that I can use another system variable to restart that category. So let's say that instead of this, I type in my sequence number, and for my category, and once again, let's say that this is an HR request. So what I might do is say, okay, well, I'm just going to call this HR as my category name. And then I am going to drop in another system variable, and I'm just going to go with cur year. And so when this gets parsed, it'll look and say, okay, well, I've got a sequence number. Here is my category. My category has another sequence number, which is current year. So the current year is 2024. And so this category name, because I've concatenated it with the letters HR, this category name is going to come out as HR 2024. And obviously, on January 1st, 2025, that category name is going to be renamed. And it's just going to be renamed HR 2025. All right, well, great. Now I've got a category name that automatically updates itself on January 1st of every year to provide me with a different year and thus a different category. And because the category changes, assuming that I have never used this category anywhere before, it's going to restart at 0001. Now, I do have to do some other massaging, of course, to get to HR 25, and I'm going to do that with system variables as well. So we can once again begin formulating a system variable that will return specifically this result. HR, in this case, it'll be HR 24 since it's 2024. And so what I need to do is create a sequence number in this format. So what I want is for it to start off with the letters HR, and then I'm going to drop in the current year sequence number. But now I got to do something a little special, because cur year by default will return 2024. I don't want this to be HR 2024. I just want it to be HR 24. So in this case, I have to use a modifier. Many system variables have many different modifiers. We're going to take a look at some of those modifiers. There's an entire section in the documentation, in the system variables documentation, that talks about these parameters and modifiers in various contexts. Plus, each of the individual system variable types have their own modifiers, which again, we'll look at in a few moments. For the current year, the most important modifier in this case is going to be the format modifier. Format is a very common modifier. We use it with a lot of system variables, and it can mean a lot of different things, as we'll see in a few moments. But in this case, if I just throw in a comma here and type in format equals, well, this is returning a date. Well, it's actually returning the year part of a date. So I can format this using the normal Microsoft .NET formatters for dates, which in this case, if I throw in YY, and actually I think it's YY, if I remember correctly, small y, not large y. Instead of returning the full current year, I've now changed the format to a 2-year format. If I wanted a 4-year format, well, I wouldn't need to put in a formatter at all. But if I did want to have a 4-year format, I could technically do this. It's largely unnecessary because that's the default format for current year. But if I only want 2 years, I can do that, and it will return HR current year format equals YY. So that gives me the first part of my desired sequence number option, which is the HR24 bit. Then obviously I need to drop in my dash, and now I can put my sequence number in, and I'll just copy this over here. And so this is the format using both parameters, modifiers to a system variable, and nested system variables. This will give me my HR24-001, and happily, on January the 1st of next year, it will just automatically reset itself to HR25-001, and I'm off to the races. So by using this common format, of course, if it's not an HR request, maybe it's an IT request. Okay, then fine. I can just change my system variable to drop in the word IT instead of HR. And what I'll get, of course, is IT 25-001. Now, I happen to like this particular sequence number format because it tells me, in general, the type of request that I'm dealing with. It tells me the year that that format was created, and then it gives me the number of requests for that year so that I can, see the requests sequentially if I want to. This, by the way, is very important because one of the things that we do here at BP Logix is we always ensure that there is some sort of unique sequence number for every form that gets submitted. So we always have a sequence number to look up. Sequence numbers are real useful because if you know the sequence number for a request, it's always going to be unique for every single request. And you can always find the request you want whenever you're searching through a knowledge view or what have you. So it's super important to be able to throw in this system variable and create this request number so that you can uniquely identify every request that gets submitted. Now, as we've discussed before, you probably don't want to do this in a form. You probably want to do this in the process timeline itself, so that unless there's an active process timeline running, there is no real sequence number. If you drop this into a form, there's really no way to incorporate a sequence number into a form that doesn't burn the sequence number every time the form opens. You don't want to do that. You only want the sequence number to be generated after the form has been submitted. So on the initial creation of the form, there is no sequence number. You'll probably have to put in some sort of placeholder, as I've demonstrated in several webinars, that will just get overwritten in the process timeline. In the process timeline, of course, you can use a set form data action in the process timeline as an action to occur whenever the very first activity occurs, or you can do what I like to do and just use the set form data custom task as the very first activity in the timeline to go ahead and supply that sequence number when the timeline begins. Now I've got a running timeline, so I have an actual active request. It's safe to go ahead and create that sequence number at that point. My personal preference when I'm setting a sequence number like this is to do it in the timeline as a custom task activity and use the set form data custom task. I do that because it just makes it easier to follow. One of the things about timelines, which is even though in a timeline, I can throw in a set form data on any activity I only have one activity one. So I don't want to do it on task end. I want to do it on task start. Okay, great. Well, this is, I haven't linked it to a form. I suppose I should do that. I built the form, but I didn't link it in form for timeline. So let me do that real quick and update it. There we go. Now it should work. Now I've got, well, I don't have any form fields on that form because I haven't placed any, but I can select the form field and then I can just set that sequence number here in the set form data, I can just go to value string and I can just paste that sequence number format right in here. That's fine. It'll work just fine. The problem is it kind of gets hidden up there in set form data, and you don't really know where it's occurring. Of course, if you go into the activity itself, you can set it there and see it, but it is kind of hidden doing it that way. I think it's a much better option just to, rather than doing it in my very first activity as part of a set form data, just to create a custom task activity and just invoke the set form data custom task and set it there. It just makes it more obvious what you're doing without having without having it hidden in the set form data. Just makes it a little more comprehensible. As a practical matter, I don't think it doesn't matter in terms of operation. Either of those two options will work just fine. In any event, that's our introduction to system variables, nesting system variables, and using formatters. Let's talk about formatters for a second, because there's really a lot of them. If you go into the product documentation and you go to the system variables doc, the very, very first topic is system variable parameters. Now, this is not uh, completely inclusive, because there are some other parameters that exist for special system variables. But in terms of the generic parameters, those that can be used for nearly all system variables, they're all here in this system variable modifiers and parameters topic. Like I said, it is not exhaustive, because, as we'll look here in a few minutes, different types of system variables might have some specific formatters that are specific to them. However, this has all of your general system variable formatters that you can use. Your encoding characters. We didn't talk much about encoding characters. There's really only one that is super important, and that is the $sign encoding character. This prevents SQL injection attacks. So, excuse me, anytime you're going to use a system variable in a SQL statement, such as you're passing a form field as a parameter or what have you for the SQL statement, you will need to use that encoding character. So as you can see down here, I have this select star from my table where column 1 equals, and then I've got this, what is a form field system variable, text1. And the very first thing I do after the curly bracket is I put the $sign in there. What this $sign does is encode whatever the value of text1 happens to be, and it encodes it in a SQL safe manner. So you can't prevent, so that you can prevent SQL injection attacks from someone who figures out what you're doing and fills out text1 to enter in some malicious SQL. You can just kill that with your $sign right there. In fact, in Process Director, almost anywhere that you use, such as a business value, where you use this sort of parameter, by default, Process Director, if you do not include this, is going to give you a warning that tells you you're not using the proper encoding character. In fact, let's just go ahead and do that. I've got any number of business values in here, so let's just go grab one out of business values, and we'll go over here to SQL business values, and I've got a parameterized one right here. So I'm using a parameter in this case called item number, and I can specify the parameter in my SQL statement via a system variable, and you'll note that I'm using a $sign here. Now, if I forget to put this in here by default, and I try to update my system variable, I'm going to get a warning at the top of the screen. that tells me I am not using the correct encoding parameter. You can, on your system, make it mandatory. Now, I haven't done it on this system largely because I keep it free enough so that I can cowboy my way through stuff. But you can, via a custom variable, require anytime there is a system variable in a SQL string, the system simply will not save your SQL unless you use the encoding character. So you won't just get a warning up here. It will be an error message that says, nope, sorry, you can't save that because you're missing the encoding variable. I would certainly recommend that you turn that on, especially if you're going to have a larger community of citizen developers in your system. I know it varies between customer as to who actually builds stuff in Process Director. Some have a very small team in their IT department. Some open it up to a relatively large number of business users. If you are doing the latter, then I would recommend that you set the custom variable to require the encoding character, the $, in any SQL statement. This is by far the most important coding or encoding variable. Once I stick that back in, all my warnings go away and it properly updates my business value the way that I want it to. So just to keep in mind, that is probably the most important encoding character. The second most is probably this one. One of the other things that we do in Process Director is we HTML encode all strings that get passed back to the system. And once again, we're doing this to avoid certain malicious links that people might enter. You really want to sort of denature those kind of hyperlinks and stuff. And so what we do is we just basically take the HTML and we just break it down into the HTML string. So basically doesn't work as HTML. This is just built in, this is just baked into the cake. If you use HTML, we are going to convert it. We're going to convert the raw HTML to text. So it won't work as HTML. Generally, that's a wonderful idea. There are occasions whenever you actually want HTML to work as HTML from a system variable. And in that case, then you can use this bar character to turn off the automatic HTML encoding. You would obviously only do that in a situation where you need the HTML to work as HTML. And you obviously know that's going to be a trusted link that you're using in a system variable. And since you are providing whatever that link may be, and you want it to work the way that HTML works, you can turn off the HTML encoding. Obviously, this is not something we recommend, but it is on one or two occasions something I've had to use to make some cool HTML thing work the way that I wanted it to work. Again, you have to be careful when you do that because, I mean, technically, it is a sort of security vulnerability, assuming somebody could get in. I mean, let's say you were using some sort of form field system variable. Well, you don't want somebody to put in a malicious link into a form field. So if it's something that is supplied by the end user, you probably would never want to use this encoding. But if it's something that you're providing and that you're confident in the security of it being provided, you're going to find this encoding character useful. There are several other encoding characters which you might want to use. None of them are particularly important, but the ampersand, I'm sorry, the $, that's the one that is super important and the one that you will use about 99% of the time. There's some other manipulations that you can do with strings, string manipulation, finding indexes and stuff like that. If we go back And anybody who wants this can just email me and ask me for it, because I have examples of all of this in this particular form. And if you want to see me go through this form and go through all of the different possible permutations of some of these formatters and string manipulations like pattern replace and substring and changing the case and all of that, uh, those are all part of this form. You can just run this form and put in the appropriate values in the appropriate fields, and you'll be able to see examples of how all of these work. So if you want this, I'm happy to send it to you. But since I've already covered it before, I don't feel it necessary in this particular webinar to go and cover that in detail. But I do have an example for you. I'm happy to give it to you. And you can see examples of all the things like pattern and replace. And so I can take some text, find a pattern in that text, and replace it with another pattern of my desiring. Another one that is kind of that is useful is the ability to pull arrays or lists. Now, in this case, it's not an array. It happens to be a list from a list box. But any list in Process Director always gets returned as a comma separated list. It doesn't matter whether it's a column in a set of array fields, or if, as it is in this case, the contents of a multi-select list box. If you put a list box on a form, one of the properties of a list box is to be able to select multiple items in a list box. So I have multiple items selected, and if I want to know the value of that list box, like all other lists in Process Director, it's going to return it to me as a comma separated list. And so the encoding character, the asterisk encoding character, will change how this list gets returned to you. So if you have just a plain system variable, right, where you just this field, let's say, is list box 1. And so if I just have a plain system variable where I call list box 1, this is the format in which it is going to be returned. It's going to be returned as a comma separated list, but it has these quite troublesome commas at the very beginning and the very end of the string. That is just the standard raw comma separated list. If I drop in the encoding character, the asterisk encoding character, it will remove those first and last commas, but it's also going to put each individual item inside single quotes. Now, you may or may not want that. If you don't want that, you can combine that encoding character with the pattern and replace, and I can just look for that single quote or apostrophe, whatever you want to call it, and I can just replace it with nothing. So I can basically, using pattern and replace, just find each of these single quotes and replace them with nothing, and then I can end up with a nice comma separated list that doesn't have those irksome commas at the beginning and the end of the list. So there's a lot of different ways that you can manipulate the strings that come back from a system variable. You can also find a particular string inside a system variable and find out where that string starts in the system variable. So if you're looking like for a specific word, you can return an index of where that word is, where it was returned. So a couple of different things like that. Form fields have their own formatting options, and the formatter is format equals, like we saw a few minutes ago. And I can format any field to basically do anything I want. Now, obviously, if I have a value that is text, I can't format text as numbers. So if it's ABCD, it obviously can't be formatted as AB.CD because A, B, C, and D are not numbers. So it also depends on the type of data that is being returned by the system variable as to how all of these formatters will work. However, there are several formatters for form field. Numerical system values have their own formatters, Basically, it either comes as currency or number. I think the standard format for many fields is actually a decimal format called double. Uh, so it returns it as a decimal. If I put it in just as number, it will change it to an integer. And of course, I can convert a double to currency quite easily by setting it as currency. Digits is another important one. And I kind of forgot digits when I was back here on this particular one, because my sequence number, I actually do need to set the number of digits. I want a 4-digit number in this case, and I didn't set it here. The digits formatter enables you to specify the number of digits in a number that gets returned. So in this case, I would, right after my uh, right after this little group of text here, which is setting up my category for that particular sequence number, I could then, oh, I didn't want to delete that, did I? I wanted to be there before I hit that comma. And then I could just type in digits equals 4, and that would give me a 4-digit number. And so if the actual number was less than 4 digits, like in this case, the number 1, it would just give me 3 leading zeros to pad it out to a full 4 digits. So any sort of numerical system variable that gets returned, you can simply pad it to the number of digits that you want. Date-time system variables have their own set of unique formatters. So if it is a date time, there are several different manipulations that you can make. Um, One of the more interesting ones is the ability to just automatically add or subtract days or business days or what have you to a system variable that returns a date. So in this case, we have the activity start date, and we have the activity name for the activity start date. And in this case, we're just saying, okay, we're just going to say business days equals 10. And I just want you to add 10 days. Similarly, I could subtract 10 days by throwing in business days minus 10. So I can automatically just add a business day. So for example, if I'm in a timeline activity, and I'm just going to go ahead and copy this real quick. So if I'm in a timeline activity, and we'll just go back here to my timeline activity. I didn't save this, did I? Well, let me update it real quick. There we go. Now we're back to activity 1. So I have this activity 1. In this particular case, it's a user activity. And obviously, I could set the duration of activity to 10 business days. I could do that, and that would be just fine. It would set it to 10 days. And in general, what would happen in that case would be if I went to my due date, I could determine how I wanted that due date calculated, and that would add the 10 days of due date. On the other hand, I could set the due date via a system variable. I mean, there are times when it's not really the duration that I care so much about. I might expect this to be done in 2 business days normally. But I don't want 2 business days to be the due date. I want to give some grace period for people maybe being out of the office or what have you. And so rather than allowing the duration of my activity to be set by or my due date to be set by the duration of the activity, I might want to set my own separate due date, and I could set that from a system variable. So I could actually just put start date. This activity is activity 1. So I need to call it activity 1. And then I could just add business days equals 10. So I still have to set how I want that 10 days counted from actual activity start or configured activity start to get my 10 days. So I still have to do that. However, by setting the due date from a system variable, even though this activity has a duration of 2 days, because that's how long I expect it to take, I'm going to give it a grace period, and I'm going to give it a full 10, well, in this case, 10 business days. So that would be 2 full weeks. Maybe I don't want to give it 2 full weeks. Maybe I just want to, instead of having it business days, I might just want to make it days. And so therefore it's just 10 calendar days. And now I'll have a due date that is sort of separated from the actual duration of the activity and will get calculated independently based on this system variable. It will just go pull the activity start date for activity one, and then we'll just add 10 days to it. So that allows me, by using that particular formatter, to change things up on what the actual date gets returned. It will basically return a date that is 10 days, or in this case, 10 business days after the activity start date. In general, for time system variables, date time system variables, they can be formatted with any of the normal .NET formatters in terms of formatting. So you can see that there. There is a type called the time span system variable. Time span system variables don't return date times. They return elapsed time. So for example, the date diff system variable, I want to find the difference in days, hours, minutes, in this case, between two dates. I can certainly do that, but what gets returned to me is not a date time. It is a data type called a time span, which basically is a very large integer that counts, I believe, the number of microseconds. Um, so that's a big time span, and of course I can format that however I want to. Again, using the normal formatters for .NET. In this case, they're enclosed in square brackets, so I can pull days, hours, and minutes for whatever time span gets returned by date diff. So in this case, based on the example I've given, it's 2 days, 4 hours, 23 minutes. And this is the format in which it will return. Different types of system variables, as I said, have their own unique things. One of the unique system variable types is user system variables. So we often use common system variables like current user or email user to return a user from the process director system. Users have their own unique system variable formatters that you need to be aware of. And these are the format options right here. Now, all of these, with the exception of one, show manager, all of these are derived from the system itself. In every user, and let me hit OK here. Well, actually, I don't want to save that, so I'm not going to hit OK. I'm just going to go straight to user administration. So every system variable that returns a process director user gives you access to all of the fields that are included down here in additional properties. So I don't have all of them filled out, but I have several of the additional properties filled out for my account here in Process Director. And the way that I can address any of those variables is by pulling these format options. So, format equals name, in this case, would simply return whatever I have set up here as the username, which in my case would be obviously Dale Franks. But all of these other email, same thing, it would return my email address, and then business unit would return, in my case, product. And so I have all of these different formatters here. I also have another special formatter up here called Show Manager. Now, in my setup, I have a manager who is specified in my user account. It's Diana in my case. So Diana is my supervisor. So all of these items here that I can return for me, I can also return for my supervisor simply by adding in the show manager equals 1 option. And instead of returning my information, usually current user would return, my stuff. But if I were to log in and this system variable were used, well, current user would say, okay, well, let's find Dale, finds me. And then it sees this show manager equals 1. Okay, I don't need Dale. I need his manager. Who's his manager? Well, in my case, as we've seen, it's Diana. Okay, great. So now I'm returning information about Diana, not Dale, even though Dale is the current user. Now I just need information about his manager. And what I need is Diana's email address. And so I can just pull that and send out an email address. This is often useful for sending out notifications in a notification activity. Uh, I probably wouldn't use current user. I'd probably use, activity user for a specified activity. But if I wanted to send an email to their manager, I could just take that system variable, the active activity users or whatever it may be, or activity user for activity 1, and then type in show manager equals 1, format equals email, and I could use that as the notification email for a notification that was sent via a notification activity. So, for example, if I didn't finish an activity prior to my due date, I might want to send a past due notification to my manager, and I can do that with this particular type of system variable. So, when you use any sort of user system variable, so we have these generic system variables here, like current user. We also have system variables elsewhere that return users. For example, any of your activity user system variables. So if we go to timeline activity system variables, active activity users, activity users complete, all of them return process director users. When you return a process director user, you're not really just returning a piece of text for that user. You are returning all of the possible accessible information about that user that is stored in process director. So these user system variables, there are some generic user system variables, but there are also user system variables associated with timeline activities or workflow steps for any of you who happen to still use workflows. Email user, which is an email system variable that returns a user, and all of the user system variables can be manipulated in the same way. Also, there is form field system variables. Form field system variables are tricky because a form field can be kind of any sort of system variable. It can be text, it can be dates, it can be almost any data type, zip codes, email addresses. They all have their particular data types. And so you need to know what sort of data type the form field is before you can figure out what sort of parameter might get assigned to that form field. So if you go into the form field sections here, you can see the different parameters as we saw earlier. All right, so with that introductory material in mind, let's talk about some usages. Let's go into our webinar form. There are a couple of things that are best practices on any form that BP-Logix recommends, and we do recommend, for example, that you throw in the task instruction and the running activity name inside the form at the very top of the form as kind of a notification when a user opens a form. At the very top of the form, it says, hey, you're a current user for this task. These are the task instructions. It's why we consider it important in a process timeline whenever you are filling out a process timeline activity, that on the activity tab, you throw in those instructions for your end users, because you want to tell your end users what it is that they're supposed to do in this activity. And the only way to tell them that is to put that into the form itself. So when you're dropping a system variable into a form, technically you don't need to do anything special. In fact, while we're here, I'm just going to go ahead and copy what that's the email template. Just to make my life easier and to make this go a little faster, I'm just going to copy and paste. Now, you know what? I'll just paste these and then we'll talk a little more about it. So let me just run over here into this form and we'll just paste these. So I'm just throwing these up here at the very top. Now, there are a couple of different options that I have for using these system variables. And I think I want to get rid of that table here because I don't want these to be in a table. So bear with me for just a second. And instructions, let me get them out of that table. Let me delete this table. There we go. So at the very, didn't want to quite delete that much, did I? So at the very top of my form, I have these two system variables. Now I've got a couple of different ways of putting system variables into my form. I can, in fact, just type a system variable just like that. I can do that. And for my task instructions, I might as well just type it out here. I can do that. It'll work just fine. Although I probably want to have a space after that colon. I don't need to do anything special. I can just throw in the system variable text. When Process Director runs this form, it's going to parse all of this as a system variable. Nothing is going to happen if I run it now, simply because I'm not in the context of any task. So let me just drop one in here that I know will run, which is cur user. So we'll at least see that. So if I go ahead and run the form, none of this is going to show up. I think a couple of colons will show up, but there won't be any values for any of those system variables because I'm not in a context where they can be evaluated. I am, however, in a context where current user can be evaluated. So when I'm using a system variable, if that system variable can be parsed in the context in which I'm running things, it will display. If it is not parsable, it's basically empty and it won't be displayed. So up here at the very top, I'm not running in any activity. There are no active activity users. And so therefore, these system variables don't show up. Now, the colons is hard text, right? It's just hard, it's just a typed colon. And the space after the colon is also, hard coded text technically. And so it will show up, but there won't be any values because I'm out of context, which is another important thing to remember whenever you're using system variables. When my form runs, is my system variable going to be in context or out of context? If it's not going to be in context, so in this case, it's not in context because I haven't submitted the form. Until I submit the form, I'm not running any activity. And also, I don't have any task instructions because I just looked at that activity and didn't add any task instructions. So I'm never going to have task instructions. However, current user is a universal global system variable. It's always in context. So if I'm using Process Director, it knows who I am because I've logged in. So it will always show up for me. Whether you want to use just plain text or the system variable control is up to you. Personally, I'm a fan of the system variable control. I like it because it makes my form a little more compact and a little easier to read. The downside of it, of course, in this case, let's just use cur date. Let's not use the same thing over and over. And here I would just call it current date. And ultimately, I will spell current correctly, but there we go. Now I have a current date uh, system variable control. Yes, it is technically a little less convenient to have to click on the control and then come over here to edit the system variable or edit the label. But it does make your form a lot more readable, I think, and more comprehensible to someone who's just coming in and using it or who's reviewing it. Depending on how often you're going to use these system variables, well, your forms can get a little bit ugly. Also, this is taking up a lot of space on my form, which I can compact down to this on my form if I use the system variable control. So it's really up to you how you do it. From an operational standpoint, there's literally no difference at all. I am going to save this form and I am going to go into my webinar timeline and I am going to throw in some task instructions, which I should have done a moment ago, but failed to do so, so that we can actually run this form and submit it and we can actually see these things pop into context. So we'll go to our webinar timeline. We'll close. Oh, I'm in the form still. All right, let's go to our timeline. Let's open up my activity and just type in this is a sample instruction for an activity. And I'm not even going to check my spelling, even though I know it's wrong. So now I can run this form again. Once again, at the top, it's not going to show me anything. Obviously, current user, current date are both going to work. I'll go ahead and submit my form. And there we go. Now it knows who the actual activity user is for this activity, me. And so it derives it from the system variable. And then, of course, my task instructions show up here. When I'm doing a system variable, I actually have a couple of interesting options that we don't talk much about, but that are often useful. And that is the pre, post, and null instructions that we can put in a system variable. So, for example, let's take our task instructions. And for my task instructions, I can do something like this. Pre and I should probably do that. Now we can run our form. Actually, did I save? No, I didn't save that other form instance. I closed it. So let's give it a second to save here. And once it saves, we can just pop open that form instance again, I believe, because I don't think that I completed my task. And I think I did it wrong. Where was my pre, post, and null on here? Oh, yeah, I did do it wrong. You know what? Equal signs are important. So it should be pre equals task instructions. And I closed the form instance again because of course I did. That's fine. We'll go back in and reopen it real quick. Well, as soon as it saves, for some reason I'm saving very slowly today. There we go. There's my task instructions. So I have pre, post, and null. So let's complicate things a little bit here. I'm going to go back and I'm going to delete my task instructions. So I've forgotten to put task instructions for this task. Okay, so what happens if I run into that and I want to make that clear that there are no instructions? Well, by the way, prepends items, post appends items. So I'm going to change this real quick so that I want to end my string here with task instructions. So we'll just set this as post. And I also have something called null. And null equals there are we'll make no instructions were given. And that should be a quote, not a colon. So now I'm using post and null. And so my task instructions text will appear at the end of that string rather than at the beginning of that string. And by the way, I'm doing it in plain text here simply because it's simpler and faster. So in the interest of time, that's why I'm not doing it inside the system variable control, but it works just the same. I can use pre, post, and null anywhere that I need to for any of these system variables. And there is my form, which I am now going to refresh. And I messed up on the post, so it didn't read it, but I did get my no instructions were given. I'm not sure how I messed up the post, but I did. So I'd have to go through and figure out what I did. Task instructions, pre, post, and null. Well, I'm not entirely sure how I messed up on pre, post, and null. Um, but we'll go back here. Oh, that's implementation, not what I wanted. We go there, system variable parameters, and let me find post. Okay, pre, post, and null. So what did I do? Text, pre, post, and null. Um, okay, weird. Not sure what happened there, but we're going to go back and that instruction should work, assuming everything else is working. So we're going to paste that in real quick and we'll go back. So now I should have a pre, post, and null for this, which again we'll save. And we'll go back to our form here. Once it finishes saving, we can refresh it. I don't remember off the top of my head if I can't use post if I don't use pre or not. So I'm not sure what the problem was with that, but let's refresh. Oh, value if null. It's just null. So if it's null, it's just null. Okay, well, that explains it. Value, if it's null, it just returns the value if null. There is no pre and post. So I'd actually have to go back over here, put some instructions back in. Again, misspelled once more. But now I should be able to refresh. There we go. Now it works. So the problem wasn't that the post didn't work. The problem was it was null. So there is my actual instruction right here. And then you can see my pre and my post are there. Obviously, I would want to add some spaces and other stuff to make this work. But pre, post, and null is pretty cool because with pre, I can put in a header like instructions or activity user or whatever, so that my system variable would be a little bit more formatted. So, like up at the top, well, again, that's the email. So, up at the top of the form itself, I could, well, keep opening the wrong thing. So, up here for my activity users, activity running name, um, I can just add in pre equals active user and save that. And as soon as it finishes loading the save, we can refresh my form. And my form refreshes, holding off. It should save and then refresh the form. I'm doing both at the same time. There we go. That's how it works. And so now I've got active user Dale Franks. In fact, I could even do this. I believe I'm going to throw in a little HTML here, and I'm going to resave it. And I'm going to refresh this form so that we can get it refreshed as soon as the form definition saves. There we go. And so now I've set my heading to bold so that I can kind of, format out how I want my heading to work. In general, I should have both of these things at the top of the top of any form. I really should have the active user or users and their instructions, just as a best practice. So if you have a form template, in fact, I believe I've done that on my system. If we go back and we look on my template library and we go into my application and we look at my form, at the very top of the screen, now I've formatted a little differently. I've turned it red to make it brighter, but here is my activity running name. So it will show up, whatever the running name is will show up there. And then, of course, I have my task instructions for that activity. Now, in this particular case, I'm using the running activity, not the activity users. Excuse me, not the activity users. This is fine as well. The important thing is that your users know what it is they're doing and what it is they're supposed to be doing according to the instructions. So at least this. The activity users, now that I think about it, the activity users is a little more complex. And I'll tell you why. It's nice for personalization to use activity users. I think the running activity and the instructions are far more important. And the activity users gets a little bit tricky. The reason it gets a little bit tricky is I've got two activity users system variables, and I would use different ones in different contexts. So if we go back over here to timeline activity system variables, I've got a system variable called active activity users, and I've got a system variable just called activity users. These are not the same system variables. So activity users is going to return everyone who has been specified as a participant in that activity. Doesn't matter whether they've completed the activity or not. Doesn't matter whether they are currently required in the activity or not. They've been specified as an activity user for that activity. So if I want to return all of the possible users for an activity, I would want to return activity users. However, not all users are active at any given time, or at least might not be active at any given time. For example, if I assign a task in sequence rather than in parallel, I might have 5 users assigned to that task, but they're all assigned in sequence. So what that means is that at any given time, only one of those users would be active activity users, because the other 4 users have either completed the activity or they are currently not required in that activity. So therefore, they're not active activity users. Similarly, if I were, now obviously, if I was to assign the activity in parallel to 5 different users, then they would all 5 be active at the same time. So in that case, active activity users and activity users would return the same 5 users. Another scenario, I've assigned a task to a group of people, 5 users, and I've assigned the task to the first user to accept. Now, depending on when I opened up that form and active activity users was called, if nobody has accepted that activity yet, then there are 5 active activity users. As soon as somebody says, I accept this activity, and it gets assigned to them, 4 of them drop off as not needed. So from that point on, there would only be 1 active activity users. So if you want everybody, activity users is the system variable that you want to return, because that just returns everybody. If you only want the people who are actually actively working in the task, then you would want to use active activity users. So based on which one of those you use and where you might happen to be in the activity and how the activity is set up for task assignment, e.g. parallel, in sequence. There's also round robin. There's also the user who has least number of items in their workflow. Active activity users might show me everybody, or it might only show me one person. So determining what system variable to use in that context might be a little more complex, and it's going to depend entirely on what you want to see and what users should appear. And that's going to depend, obviously, on who is active at any given time and whether that's even what you want to see or whether you want to see all 5 of them. So anyway, a little wrinkle in pulling activity users back. By the way, similar things happen for workflow. For any of you who are still using any workflows, you have, active step users and you have step users, and they do exactly the same thing. Although hopefully nobody is still using workflows for that. But in any event, what I've done up here now, another complication that always arises if we're going to throw these kind of system variables at the top of a form as a best practice. And in my case, as you can see, I've actually got some hard-coded text here, which is also formatted, colored, bold-faced. Great. But if I show this line of text, then if I'm not in a running activity, then I will have neither a running activity name nor instructions. But what I will see is running activity : dash instructions : which is going to look ugly at the top of my form, and I don't want to see it. So if somebody opens up a new form instance, I don't want to see these items. So I've done the simple thing, and I've just dropped them into an embedded section control. And for that embedded section control, I just hide it when it's a new form instance. That way, anytime that this shows up, anytime that I am actually inside the process and I'm running, I can see these items at the top, and it's giving me useful information. If I'm submitting the form for the first time, none of this information is relevant or useful, so I want to hide it. And in fact, the more I think about it, the more I think that this is not a great This is not a great condition to have. It solves half of my problem. It hides these system variables on a new form instance, doesn't hide it after the timeline is complete. None of these system variables make any sense. They have no context if I am not actively running in an activity. And so therefore, I should only see them if I'm in a context where I could actively be running in an activity. So I think for this condition, just to make this all pretty, would be to add an or condition and just check the timeline status. So I want this hidden if the timeline status is complete. And so great. Now it's not going to be shown. This section is not going to be shown if I'm in a new form instance, and it's not going to be shown after my process timeline is complete. This all makes me very happy because it's only going to show up when I want to see it. Now, I can elide past that. One of the reasons why I showed you the pre, post, and null is that if you use pre, post, and null, and actually I wouldn't even use null, I would just use pre and post. And really, in most cases, you're just going to use pre, right? So here we'll just go instructions. Well, actually, let's format it. Let's go the whole 9 yards. We have some time. Strong instructions colon and strong space there. So now for these two system variables, my activity users, actually, let's just get rid of activity users. Let's just go with activity running name. That's the important one. Let me get rid of this second curly bracket there. So we'll just go with activity running name, and right here, we'll just change this to running activity. And you know what? I'm going to throw a post in here too. Watch this. So we'll go with post equals. Well, I didn't want the equal sign. I still didn't want the equal sign. Where's the little dashy thing? I have literally forgotten where the dash is on the keyboard. Boy, that's embarrassing. Where's the dash? Um, okay, fine. I have a numeric keypad. I'll use what is supposed to be the minus key. There we go. And now I will take these two and I will butt them right up against each other. And we'll save this. And of course, I closed the form instance again. You know, I probably should have done one more thing. I probably should have colored it red to make it stand out, but we'll pretend that we did that. So let's go back to our form instance here and reopen it. All right, great. Now I've got running activity, activity one, and then I've got my space, my dash, my space, instructions, and then my task instructions. All right, great. That's pretty cool. Now, if I create a new instance of the form and we run it, nothing appears at the top. Remember, I'm out of context for either of those system variables, so they don't appear. Now, if I use the pre-post setup for the system variables, I can actually just put all of the text that I want in there with the knowledge of knowing that it's automatically going to appear whenever it's in context and it's automatically going to disappear whenever it's out of context. So if I complete this task, and of course it closes my form, we'll have to go back in and find my second form instance and reopen it. Once again, no instructions at the top. So the way that I did it in my uh, template is, a little excessively complex. I don't really need to jump through all of these hoops and create an embedded section and figure out when it needs to be shown and hidden, because I can simply use the system variable with pre, post, and null, and my system variables will appear or disappear at the appropriate time without taking up any additional space that I don't need them to take up. So this is an alternative way. You have to know the system variable syntax a little bit, and you have to be sure that you write things down correctly. But assuming that you do this, you can actually just have that appear and disappear right off of your form without you having to worry about conditions or anything like that. Another time that system variable comes in useful is in process timelines. Now, I've showed you one example of a process timeline when we set the due date via a system variable. We actually do task assignments via a system variable. So in this particular case, we know that my supervisor is Diana. So I'm going to submit this form, and I'm going to submit it as me. But I'm going to go into participants, and by default, of course, it is set to timeline initiator. But I can actually set it from a system variable. And so I can change, let's say I just want to assign whoever my supervisor is. Now, again, I can do this because I have a supervisor specified in my user account. If you don't have users specified like that, you're not sourcing from Active Directory where you are tracking their supervisors and whatever, then you can't do this. But in my case, I can do this because I know who initiated the timeline, right? So I can use the system variable for, well, I can use a couple. I can use form submit user. I can use timeline initiator, although I'm not entirely sure that timeline initiator is the proper sequence. It is timeline initiator. Thank you very much. I will copy that. And so I can set this to timeline initiator, but I want my supervisor to be the first person who gets assigned a task here. So I'll drop in show manager equals 1. There might be another formatter that I have to use to make this work. Oh, geez, I don't remember off the top of my head, but we're going to try it like this. I think I may have to specify the user UID. I'm not sure. If so, we'll do that, and I'm sure we'll get it to work here. But I'm just going to go with timeline initiator and show manager equals 1. So rather than returning me as the timeline initiator, it should return whoever the timeline initiator's manager was. And since I'm going to be initiating it, my manager is Diana. So we can go in here. We can run our form and we can submit it. It's going to go away. Not assigning a task to me, obviously. So let's go ahead and look at our active timelines. This should be the one that we just set. We'll look at the properties for that timeline. And is that the right timeline? Activity 1 is in an error state. So it was unable to process that user. So what we're going to do is we are going to go back into our webinar timeline and we are going to edit this to, I think it's format equals UID. I think. So we're going to save and close, and we're going to go back to this active timeline, and we are going to restart this activity. There we go. Now it's assigned to Diana Stewart. So I had to get the right formatter in there to pull the UID because it needs to identify it by their user UID in Process Director. By default, using the system variable will just return their name. That doesn't properly assign it. So I I suspected that that wasn't going to work at first. It didn't work, and I was right. I did need the UID to make it work. So with that system variable, now anytime anybody submits a request, it knows who submitted the request. The form submitter is the person who's kicked off the timeline. And I'm just going to go ahead and cancel that since we've gotten what we wanted out of it. And all I have to do is set up that system variable properly to show the manager and to also specify the UID so that it uses the process director UID to specify the correct user and assign the task to that user UID. So that format equals UID is super important because there's no user in the system that process director knows as Diana Stewart. Process director only knows users by their UID. But now I just automatically, whoever submits a form, the first approval task now just simply gets assigned to their manager. Other contexts in which system variables are useful are in knowledge views. So we're going to have to do a couple of things here to our form. I'm going to need to at least add one field to this form. So I'm going to get rid of all of that other system variable stuff. I'm going to keep these system variables here because, best practices and whatnot. Again, if it was me and I was building these system variables, I'd drop them into system variable controls. I wouldn't drop them in the way that I've done it here. I wouldn't do it in text because I just think it's ugly. But I am going to need a form field, and we're going to call it input one. I only need one form field to do what we're going to do. And we're going to save and close this form. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a system where I have a single process timeline and I have two forms running in the process timeline. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to build such a system because I already have one. So I'm not going to do it here. I'm going to come into support because I actually had a question about something. Well, that one doesn't have any fields on it. No, I guess, never mind. I guess I am going to build it. We're going to rename this. We're going to name this webinar form 1. And then we are going to copy and paste it. And I'm going to call this webinar form 2. And I'm also going to turn off the automatically start this process. We'll update our form. So now I have two forms. In both cases, both forms have a control called input 1. Now in my process timeline, so webinar form 1 is obviously my primary form, webinar timeline. In fact, I guess I need to make it clear that that's what's going on here. So we'll call this form 1. and we'll make that heading 1. We'll save that one. Now we have to open up Form 2. And we'll give it a little different name. Uh, this saving time is worse than being stabbed here. Now we're going to webinar form 2. We're going to edit this. So up at the top, we're just going to call this second form. And once again, we'll set that to heading 1 and we'll save it. And what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to build the timeline, which swaps our forms out. And we're doing all of this so that I can build a knowledge view. Now I'm starting to think maybe I should have pre-built this first, but I didn't. So here we are. So activity 1, we're obviously going to make this back to timeline initiator so that I get assigned the task. And we're also going to turn that off so that it's one less email notification that I have to clear out whenever I end the webinar. We're going to create a second activity. And for this activity, we are going to make this a form actions activity, and we are going to set form 2 as the default form for the timeline. And we'll drop that right there. And then we're going to create a third activity, which will be activity 3. Again, that's a user activity. It will be assigned to me. And we are going to make that happen after activity 2. So I'm going to submit the form. It's going to show me activity 1. I can make whatever changes I make to the form, complete my task. Then it's going to swap the forms out to the second form and pop me back into activity 3. And I'll have to put in a new value in activity 3. Technically, I don't even think I need activity 1 here. I'm just putting it in there for clarity so that we can see what is happening with the form. So we're going to run webinar form 1. We're going to run that. We're going to submit it. And I'm now going to just put in some values here, and I'm going to complete that activity. And now we're in the second form. So I'm going to throw in some values there. And I'm going to do this a couple of times. So you're going to have to forgive me. But we need to have several different form instances to run so that we can see how we're going to use the system variable inside the inside a knowledge view. And FFFF. And there we go. So now I've got several form instances, and I've actually got some form instances that I don't want, which are these down here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that one. Actually, I think I need to delete those two. Sorry. And apparently I didn't fill that one out. Okay, so I need to delete this one as well. Delete. Sorry, I'm just getting rid of extra form instances that I don't need. So I've got webinar form 1. I have 3 instances of webinar form 2. And in my timelines, I only want those last 3. So I want to delete those. So I've only got my last 3. And do I have any active timelines? I do, which I also want to delete. Okay. So now I've got 3 timelines and 6 form instances. I need to query this. So we're going to create new, and we're going to create a knowledge view if I can figure out where K exists in the alphabet. Now, here's my problem. In a knowledge view, I can generally return items from a single form or a single timeline. Now, happily, I've got only one timeline that I have to pull from. So technically, I can go in here and I can set my webinar timeline as the timeline I want to pull from. Remember, I have two form instances for each timeline instance, and I want to return both of those form instances. Okay, well, so far, so good. I'm going to go into the options tab and I'm going to kill everything but form instances, and I'm going to go ahead and update and run. And great, I have 6 form instances. Great, that's what I need. So far, things are fine. Now here's where it gets tricky. I want to see what the value is of input 1. Well, if I go back to my definition and I pop open the columns tab, can I drop in a form field name? So input 1. That's my form field. Input 1. It's the same in both. And in fact, just for simplicity's sake, we're just going to get rid of everything that we don't need here. All right. Well, I have 2 forms, both of which have input 1. Now, I do have a couple of options. I can do the ugly option, input 1, form 1, and then I guess input 1, form 2. And then I have to pick a specific form field from a specific form. Boy, if I have more than one form called a webinar form, I'm going to be upset. But I do have webinar form 1 and webinar form 2. So webinar form 1, input 1. But now I've got to have the second field where I now have to find form field, and now it's webinar form 2. We are very lucky that I chose those specific names. Webinar form 2, and once again, oh, that is not the right webinar form 2. Oh, I think it still calls it webinar form 1 copy. Yes, the cache hasn't updated. Okay, great. So there's webinar form 1 copy, which in the fullness of time will be renamed webinar form 2. Okay, I'm, happy, I guess, but this is kind of ugly because I'm going to end up with 2 form instances for everything. And to make it work via the UI, I've got to I've got to have separate columns for each of the forms, which I just don't like and I don't want to do. Happily, there's a fix for that. I don't have to do it that way. That's the way Process Director wants me to do it, but I don't have to. I can just delete this column and I can just call this one input 1. And remember, I have the same form field name in each form. So what I really need is just a value here. And I just need to pull input 1. Now, I did not hit my colon, so it was not a system or a form system variable. Now it is. So now I'm just going to pull input 1, and now I'll update and run. And now everything goes into a single column. This is because of context again. We've talked about context in terms of whether I'm actually running in a process or not. But context also works in this case. Every row in the knowledge view is operating in the context of a specific form instance. So each one of these form instances, it probably would have been nice if I'd given them some sort of sequential instance names so we could tell them apart, which I did not do, but at least we know which form is which. So at least I did that. But each one of these forms in context has a form field named input one. And so therefore, when the knowledge view is being constructed, it says, okay, we're looking at this form. And hey, there's a form field system variable. And since I'm in this form, this must be the value that they want. They must want the input one field from this form. So what the system variable enables me to do, as long as I have the same name in all of the fields, it allows me to concatenate all of those fields into a single column in the knowledge view so that I don't have that ugly half of the rows are blank and half of the rows have a value. I don't have to do that. I can just concatenate all of the rows. We don't think much about system variables in knowledge views, but we should probably think more about it, because at the end of the day, when we put a value in a knowledge view column, look at the name of the dialog box we are opening. It is the choose system variable dialog box. These are all system variables. The fact that you can pull them off of a menu conveniently doesn't make them not system variables. They still are. So you can actually go in and like in this case, if I have 2 forms or 3 or 5 forms, all of whom have the same form field name, then I can concatenate them all into a single column simply by using the appropriate system variable. Because when I pick the form field itself in the UI, if I pick, form field, form and form field, Process Director is going to ask you for a form definition. It's going to ask you for a specific context to help you pull back just the right value. And sure, in some circumstances, that's super helpful. But it's not super helpful in my case because I want to unify these form fields. And so therefore, instead of being guided down this path by Process Director, I'm just going to set it as a string, and I'm just going to pull the string form field name. Because for each row, I'm going to be in the appropriate context of the appropriate form instance. It's always going to return the right data to me. I'm not going to do it because it would take too long to set up, but I could do something similar if I was pulling back a whole bunch of process timeline instances. And I had a whole bunch of activities that were named initial approval. And I wanted to return all of the active users for initial approval in a single column. I could do that because I'm pulling back timeline instances. Each timeline instance will go into context, and each one will have, presumably, a completely different set of active users for the initial approval activity. However, it doesn't matter because I'm pulling from initial approval. Each of those activities or each of those timeline instances has an activity called initial approval, even though they may be from 5, 10, 15, 20 different timeline definitions. As long as I have that initial approval activity, I can concatenate all of that information into a single column in the knowledge view. So if you want to have, less complex knowledge views in terms of how they look, you want to concatenate items into a knowledge view to make your knowledge view simpler and easier to understand from an end user's perspective, then fine, you can do that simply by using system variables. Now, you are going to lose some level of capability. Normally, if I wanted to edit a form field in a knowledge view, I could do that. Once I'd selected the form field type in the column data column of that particular row, then I would get a checkbox to allow in-place edit. If you use the system variable, you're going to use that capability. Sure, everything is all going to be concatenated into a single field, which is great for display. But if you want to edit it, then obviously that is going to obviate your ability to allow in-place edit. In-place edit is only going to work if you specify a field using the form field from the choose system variable dialog box. If I do that, then I can reactivate allow in-place edit. Otherwise, this is really just for display, but it is super convenient. And people forget that all of this column data, it's all system variables. And you don't have to pick the system variable out of the dialog box. You can type in your own system variables. As long as that system variable is evaluable in the context of whatever type of knowledge view you're running, it's going to return the data that you expect. Because everything in column data is system variables. That's how system variables work. So with that, I think that is all I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to concentrate today on some of the sort of the practical implementation of how you would do some of the more common system variables. I think we've managed to accomplish that. So I guess my purpose for today has been served. I hope you have a great week, and I look forward to talking to you again next week. Until then, so long.